So our next task is to get our username and display name sent back as well as part of our attendee object, or our attendee DTO object. So what we'll need to do to achieve this is we need to provide some extra configuration inside our mapping profile. But what we've done so far is actually really good because it saved us quite a bit of typing to manually map from our activity to our activity DTO. And we didn't need to tell it anything additional about our user activity. Because we're returning this inside our activity DTO, AutoMapper is smart enough to recognize that it also needs to map from this to this inside our activity DTO as well. But we do need to provide this particular mapping some additional configuration. And what we can do is specify some configuration for each member that we're returning inside here. So I'm going to say for member, and then the first thing we need to do is specify the destination member. So I'll say dest, or just D for destination. And then I'll say D dot username in this case. So this is the property that we want to configure here. And then we need to provide it with some options. So I'll say O for options, and then say O dot, and we have various options that we can do inside here. But the one that we'll most commonly use is to map from. We want to specify the property of the object that we want to map from, so it returns this inside our attendee DTO. So we'll use the map from, and then inside here we can give it a source for its destination. So I'll say S for source equals S dot, and then we can access our app user and specify that we want to get the username from the app user. So that takes care of our username, and we also want to do the same for the display name. So we'll say D is D dot display name is the one we want to configure. The option we'll say O dot map from, and then the source will be S dot app user dot display name, and just add a semicolon at the end. Now what we should find is that when we test again, we now get our username property and our display name property sent back as part of the attendee DTO. And if I go back and resend this request, then now we get our username and our display name sent back as well. And this saves us a lot of typing just to achieve this functionality. So let's head back to VS Code, and we'll just add the return for our list as well. And let's go to our list. And what we want to do is return a list of activity DTOs. So I'll say activity DTO and replace this as the return object here, and also in the task as well. And what we'll need to do is bring in IMapper. So I'll say IMapper and call it mapper, and just bring in AutoMapper, and then just initialize this field from parameter and take out this dot. And we can do this all in one line actually. We don't need to create a variable for what we're returning here. What we can do, instead of returning activities, we can say return mapper.map, and then we'll specify our from object and our to object, and our from object in this case is going to be a list of activity, and our to object is going to be a list of activity DTO, and then we just pass in our activities inside here. And what we'll also need to do is just go back to our activities controller and just update this to return a list of activity DTOs instead. And what we should find now, if we go back to Postman and go back to our get activities request, we should find that we can now send this request and we get success. And if we take a look down at the activity with the user, then we can see that the test event with Bob as host is displaying successfully as well, along with the username and display name. So that was nice and easy. What we'll take a look at next is lazy loading of our related data, instead of eagerly loading, which is what we've been doing so far. And we'll take a look at how we can do that next.